So big meeting coming up in London tomorrow. A new defining moment maybe in the war in Ukraine. Teams from the USA and Ukraine, and with Britain as host and France there too. They call it the Quad. And on the table are the prospects for a ceasefire. All that's in the way now is a huge set of doubts and unanswered questions. Enormous problems with no obvious solutions. President Trump is sounding confident of a ceasefire deal this week, but why? Vladimir Putin is saying for the first time that he'll talk directly to Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, and without demanding the Ukrainian leader stand aside as part of the deal. But how can Ukraine agree a ceasefire while Russia insists on its occupation of Crimea being accepted as a permanent transfer of sovereignty, let alone on Ukraine abandoning its hopes of joining NATO? So when I call tomorrow's meeting defining, what will be defined? A ceasefire deal? America deciding to walk away from the search for peace and its vital support from Ukraine altogether? Let's talk first, though, to Yuriy Sak, who's an advisor to the Ministry of Strategic Industries in Ukraine. Welcome to the programme, Yuriy.
Good evening, John.
Evening to you. Tell me, do you feel at all optimistic about the meetings coming up in London delivering any agreement on a ceasefire?
Well, at this stage of this negotiating process, John, of course, our team will be going to London with mixed feelings, feelings of optimism, but as well as skepticism, because we have seen so far that it is Ukraine which has been very constructive, and it is Ukraine that has shown to date that we are ready for an unconditional ceasefire, and it is only Russia which is now actually refusing to agree to an unconditional ceasefire, which in fact is a bit considering the temporary truce that was announced for Easter, which wasn't entirely truth, and because there were still attacks along the front line. But still, we saw that when the leader of Kremlin gives an order, silence can be achieved. So it is up to the United States of America to find the right cards to convince the leader of Russia to actually agree.
Which tells me that it all depends, from your point of view, on the leader of Russia giving ground on the demands that we've heard about so far. Now, they include Ukraine ceding sovereignty over Crimea. He says the same about the other occupied territories. America wants that too. America, like Russia, want Ukraine to give up hope of joining NATO. But you will not agree to that. And so Russia has to accept that and to back away. Isn't that clear? Or there will be no deal.
Well, in a way, yes. We have made it very clear that issues such as Ukraine's territorial sovereignty are non-negotiable. So we may not be pushing for certain issues in terms of, Russian illegal occupation of our temporary occupation of our lands at this stage of the process. But of course, we will never admit or recognize the legality of these annexations and temporary occupations. As for our membership in NATO, again, we have stressed that we are ready not to push for it now and not to include this issue in the negotiating process. But Ukraine's commitment to joining NATO at some point in the future is enshrined now in our constitution.
Yes.
So it is not something we can back out of.
Right. And so Russia, you're telling us, and it's not the first time we've heard this, Russia will have to be the one that backs away, and America will have to be the one to accept that. Now, if America does not, do you fear that America may be serious about walking away from this entire process? And even perhaps stopping arms supplies and access to US intelligence on those Russian attacks? Is that a serious fear for you?
Well, of course, John, we hope that this will not materialize. We hope, and we're almost confident that the vast majority of the political elites in the United States of America understand that standing with Ukraine is squarely in the national interest of the United States.
Are you confident that President Trump is one of those elites? Because in the end, he's the one that matters, isn't he?
Yeah, but we have seen him do U-turns in his rhetoric in the past couple of weeks so many times. So, he let's just hope that this is part of his negotiating strategy, and let's just hope that he also is, a member of that group of elites who understand the vitality of supporting Ukraine for the United States of America. It's not just about us; it's about the world order. It's about the role of the U.S. in the world. But at the same time, I have to stress that we are, hope for the best but prepare for the worst. This is why we're building up our own defense industry base. We are talking on a daily basis to our European partners, and we know that the European countries are now increasing their defense spendings. They are ramping up their defense production, and we are very grateful to our European partners and the United Kingdom in particular for, being there for us and having a very firm stance on these issues.
Okay, so you prepare for the worst. Yuri, if it's still an if America withdraws its support from Ukraine, is that the end of it? Does that mean you cannot maintain your defense of your country?
Well, we've said it so many times in the past. If we have to, we will have to fight with the brooms and sticks, because for us, it's about survival. For us, we know that it's not. For Russia, it's not about our territory even, right? It's about extinguishing Ukraine as a cultural unit, extinguishing our identity, destroying our language, and making sure that no future generations call themselves Ukrainians. So if there is no support at all from anybody in the world, we will still continue to fight because we have no other choice. That's our superpower, the absence of alternatives.
Yuriy Sak, it's interesting, so interesting to talk to you, Yuri. Thank you. Yuri is the advisor to the Ministry of Strategic Industries in Ukraine. We've got British business, and we're joined now by Craraven, who's chief executive of ADS Group, which is a UK trade association, which is all about leadership in aerospace and defence and security and space. Welcome to you, Kevin.
Good afternoon, John.
Afternoon to you. So look, this tariff war, clearly it's a very big worry for British industry, including your clients. Just take us through this problem through the eyes of your clients and the impact of these tariffs.
So obviously, and we do understand that defence goods are not exempt from tariffs, and nor are aerospace goods. And both of those will provide some complexity for our members in two ways. One would be in the actual cost of the tariffs themselves. And then secondly, those goods that are already in transit might be held up at US Customs whilst paperwork catches up with it. Yeah. A lot of those goods will have left the country of origin before tariffs were introduced. So we're actually experiencing those delays now. So overall, it's a very unwelcome addition to the tough costs of doing business today.
And how important is this search, this effort to get a US-UK trade deal? How important is that to you and your clients?
Really important. About a third of defence exports goes to the US, and there are probably at a component level more that's not necessarily visible to us. So it is really important. And of course, at the heart of any US-UK trade deal is the special relationship and all that it means. So that free flow of goods is particularly important for the defence industry.
Right. I guess the truth is that even if there is a US-UK trade deal, Kevin, that won't make problems go away, will it? There's still this wider global trade war which will damage your company's supply lines and other wider sales.
Correct. Any disruption to the supply chain probably takes 18 months for any given sector to recover from, particularly where you've got these long, complex supply chains where goods being manufactured might go into a component, might go into a sub-assembly, into an assembly, and actually cross the ocean 2 or 3 times. So it does make it very difficult for organisations to keep track of that and to absorb the costs involved in it.
Yeah, worrying sign. You might have been seeing in the Times these last couple of days these reports that that the worry about America being now seen as not a fully reliable partner when it comes to defence and security cooperation. That means that British firms are stocking up on things like artillery ammunition to end that dependence on America. Give me your perspective on all of that, because that will be having an impact on some of the companies you speak for.
But so, I mean, obviously, the reliance on the US and those relationships has been a part of our landscape for 80 years now and longer. And therefore, the relationships which have been built are deep and long-standing. So finding unreliability in your partner after such a long time together is inevitably going to be difficult to deal with it. And look, to be clear, we think this really depends on the US's attitude to NATO.
Yes.
That whilst the demands for increased defence spending have been unwelcome, they're not necessarily unfair, and therefore we see that reset in NATO happening over the next couple of years as being sensible. And in that, for your industrial and military planning, you now have to take into account the possible risk that the US won't be as dependable as a partner, and therefore you have to put more effort into it.
Well, the government's working on this strategic defence review. Now, last we heard, it had been completed, just not published. It points to the huge task of upgrading our defences, and the Prime Minister's worried about the impact on affordability and spending and so on. What are you hoping to hear from this review?
Well, so firstly, we'd like it to be published as soon as possible. It is complete and has been complete for some time. But of course, it may be that aspects of it are not necessarily still accurate because of the changing world we live in and the volatility of that world. However, what we would like to see is definitive decisions on the capability required from our armed forces, rather than how much can we afford and how do we slice little bits off everything in order to be able to afford everything.
Are you worried? Are you worried then, Kevin, the government or the Prime Minister may be too worried about the cost of upgrading our defences and not enough worried about the need to do that?
I think we're in a more dangerous world. It's a cliche, but true, and therefore we need to respond. The answer is not necessarily 2.5% by 2027 and a possibility of 3% in 2030 and beyond. What we need, what the industry needs, is a long-term, clear signal of intent that allows our defence forces and the industry that support it to upgrade our resilience, our ability to supply at speed, and the capability we need to fight in a modern war.
All right. So we are watching so closely. Kevin Craraven, thank you so much.